octave rising.
I actually messed up and didn't do the ooey, and then Justine corrected. Man, out of practice. It's a beautiful day in July 2025, and it's been a long time. Taking a long break from this work because life is very hectic, and this year has been extremely intense for so many of us, and it's hard to find time for some of these other things. But in the midst of so much density and turmoil on the planet, there's also been the most beautiful undercurrents of energy coming through, especially starting this spring. I really felt a shift and through the summer, and it's a joy for Justine and myself to return here after a long pause in the field of medicine. Beautiful soul brother who has opened up the portals massively, and crystalline transmissions pouring into planet Earth, and parasitic matrix constructs falling away. So I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but I'm excited. It will unfold. Yeah, I suppose the first thing, and maybe one of the most important things as a point of perspective for what I personally see in my mind's eye for where we're at and what's happening on Earth. Basically, the inhabited terrain of the parasitic entities, the sort of underworld of beings that are not necessarily of this realm, that are not native to Earth, but have been brought here through the opening of various demonic portals and underworld entangled reality systems, and energies that feed off the human collective and feed off the organic systems. That habitat is being shrunken very actively right now, and it's happening in two directions. From one direction, obviously, it's coming in from the external, from all around our planet. So the quarantine around Earth is effectively being shrunk down, and all of our star brothers and sisters, these massive coalitions of beings from the far reaches of our universe who are here to assist with the restoration of planet Earth and humanity, are moving basically into the upper atmosphere at this point. And so from one direction, they're closing in, and then also from within the core of the Earth, there's, Gaia herself, the organic grids coming back online, and then the Agarthans and all the inner Earth beings. Those alliances are pushing another waveform that's moving up from the very center of the Earth towards the surface timeline. And so what that effectively means is that a lot of these parasitic entities that have made this planet their home for a very long time have a much smaller bandwidth in which they can now operate. It's almost, I see it almost as if they were in a vice or something, and it's closing in from above and it's closing in from below. And how that is manifested here for us on the surface timeline is to just see entities going absolutely wild. And they are hooking every available host they can find because they're aware that this process is terminal for them. And so any entity at this point that cannot hook or attach to a host is being cleared off the planet. And I feel that's a big reason why we are seeing so many people spin out en masse, maybe even people who we once were very close to and felt very connected to, and who, could now be suddenly in a very different state of consciousness, seemingly overnight. It could be a single event or moment, or it could be something that's been cultivated for a lifetime. But anybody with a requisite hook, anybody with a potential attachment point will be hooked right now. And thankfully, we know how to clear those hooks. And
as we all are hooked, we can't say that healed is an end state of being, as we deliberately incarnated into this density at the inflection point to be the vessel upon which we can clear out not just the 3D, but all of the dimensions above it. And that's where we descend to the 3D rather than ascending to the fifth, so that we can clear out that clogged drain, because we have the hooks. And the hooks actually can provide access for us to transmute these entities that have run amok in this system and extended out God's yo-yo, if you will, which is a download from a guest, not myself. But if you think about a yo-yo as expressing out from creation and then returning back, we are at the furthest point. And these parasitic entities, the Matrix has installed architecture to try and keep that yo-yo or our system as far from our connection to source as possible, so that we forget who and what we are. And those hooks, instead of us using them as leverage to transmute the architecture of the synthetic systems, we actually run it and we feed our energy into it. And so, we're not denying that we have our own hooks and experiences, and this winter really took us down, in part because of those, and simultaneously we can use them as a tether to these dissonant entities and beings and structures that we get to transmute and clear out of our system. And that connects as well to the idea of the new earth that was brought up over the past 24 hours as well. And what is the new earth? Is it something that's delivered to us by a group of beings who are conspiring to restore technology and financial systems and relationship with each other and the earth? Or is the new earth a energetic encodement that we translate through our vessel and broadcast out through us? And it's unique to each signature frequency of every being on the planet, and that creates the biodiversity of a robust and healthy ecosystem to not just restore, but also co-create anew on this dimension and on this planet.
So I think another theme for this year, in light of what Justine was sharing, is trying to decipher truth from fiction, and what is real, what is part of reality, and what is part of an overlay and construct that has been very carefully masked and engineered to look like reality. And of course that is nowhere more clear than in the media that is being blasted into humanity's collective conscience right now. So many stories being spun of these massive things that are happening on the planet, and with huge fallout and repercussions. And after so much buildup, as if to create this, release where the event takes place, or whatever it is takes place, it often just dissipates into nothing. And that is basically a clear-cut way to identify something that was, in sort of conspiracy terminology, a psyop. But it's much more than a psyop. It's actually the attempt to harvest collective energy into the manifestation of a certain inverted timeline event that would throw us off course from our highest evolutionary path. And so you can feel how the control system, how the Matrix is trying to leverage people to collectively manifest these negative timeline events over and over and over again. And it keeps failing. And it's kind of like everyone takes a breath in, like, oh my God, it's about to happen. And then it's like, oh, okay, there's not actually anything there. It was fake. And, the same is true. Because the way this architecture is installed within our brains and our bodies, the same is true even in our waking daily lives. And a very good example is sort of what's happened to Justine and I, getting pulled into the legal system in a very intense way this year, and having to sort of get a crash course in how that whole inverted structure works in this country. And you go into a building like the courthouse, and there are no windows anywhere in the building. And so you step through those doors and you find yourself, not figuratively, but literally, in a different dimension, if you will. You are in a container that is a completely 100% a construct that is built off the synthetic grids. And you are voluntarily taking your consciousness there via your body, and for a moment inhabiting what is a fake piece of architecture, an overlaid piece of architecture, a reality system. And there's literally cell towers and pyramids on top of that building, and all of these energy amplifying technologies that are there to anchor an artificial grid point. And especially where we live in Taos, New Mexico, because it is one of the meridian points of the organic earth grids, they're attempting to anchor that inverted technology directly onto a natural organic structure, so that an inverted reality stream essentially can be broadcast out through humanity. And of course, conversely, then we have the work we do, especially with the bark, of opening these dimensional portals. And those portals literally transcend every aspect of the matrix. They slice a hole in the inverted architecture, the quarantine, if you will, that has been put around Earth. And they open these huge stacks of dimensional information and access, where codes can be brought through from systems that have been basically out of communication with Earth and her grids and humanity for a very long time. And so you can see right there the contrast between bringing in the new organic structures, which are all dimensionally informed and come with these amazing teams of interdimensional beings who are architects of life forms and who are masters of creation. And then conversely, we have the artificial grid bubbles of inverted or fallen reality, which are attempting to pull the collective, pull humanity down into what are these controlled and contained hell realms, essentially intertwined with Earth. And so the creation of New Earth then becomes a very clear choice point within our own reality projection. Where are we going to feed our energy? And how clearly are we going to be able to decipher truth from fiction, or higher dimensional reality from inverted synthetic reality systems?
And with that impeccability of our energy comes one of, I think, a very interesting and challenging and age-old concept of the balance of being with doing. And it's so important to take the time to clean out our vessel, to attune to our allies, to attune to ourselves ultimately, and the great creation codes that we each as individuals are here to transmit and translate through our body. It's essential to take space to connect with what we refer to as the voice of the true mind by going beneath the chatter of the mind. And again, so much of that is to be able to broadcast the energies of ourselves, our creation codes, the new earth codes, and to be in that state of receiving and transmitting. And yet, at the same time, being in a 3D construct, we need to, with precision, know when is the moment and what is the path of action. And I think we really have felt that our whole lives as people who have built our own house and founding a school and blah, 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 blah. But then this winter with getting pulled into the legal system, because what an inverted architecture that has really created a structure of enslavement for particularly all Americans who have a birth certificate and who have a driver's license and who are plugged in to the matrix in that way, of which we are, and we've been interested in learning how to extricate ourselves from that harvesting system. And then it's forced upon us, that action of learning what is this system actually like to navigate. How can we represent ourselves and navigate it with precision and intelligence and also love for all of the beings who are participating in this system? And then what is the next step of really learning how to use the system for its original intent that was written in our Constitution, and leveraging that power of the individual and the power of the people of this place. And it's not about getting into that argument or the decisions that we make. It's just recognizing that sometimes we are forced into action. And I really have seen everybody this past year in some way or another be pulled into taking self-responsibility, which is typically direct action, whether it's for healing, clearing out the body, relationships that are dissonant, that are falling apart, needing to relocate, so many circumstantial aspects of 3D reality that require us to step into action. And I really see that this moment is about falling into deeper trust with ourselves to cultivate that field of being so that we can express truly, and letting action be driven by our intuition, that now is the precise moment to reach out to that person, to purchase the land, to start gardening, to take the cat to the vet, whatever the hit is, to actually follow through with these pieces. And the new earth, the energies may be arriving and the potential may be arriving, and yet we need to mold the primordial clay of the elements of creation in order to establish new systems on this planet. And as much as we can come together to co-create that, it's that's how we're going to unfold here in this moment.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. So I think that brings us very nicely to another theme for this year, for many of us, which is energy management and impeccability with our energy. And there are more opportunities perhaps than ever before on Earth to get sucked into various dramas or narratives or external events. And there is a distinct difference between following your own internal guidance or trying to step into the vantage point of the higher self, which can see, basically the lay of the land and the trajectory of your soul, your soul path, and what you came here to do on Earth in this lifetime. And all of the other infiltrative energies that are basically trying to pull our attention away from that true soul path and looking for us to hurl energy in all different directions. And again, it's incredibly clear, at least in America, but I believe probably the whole world over, in terms of our politics right now, and how there's literally an opportunity a second to get spun out and up in arms about this little thing or that little thing. And meanwhile, from a higher perspective, without this being itself a political statement, many of us are watching these systems of old being deconstructed. And you could say that they're being deconstructed by human beings, or you could say that they're being deconstructed by the influx of energy from our sun and by the creator reoccupying this realm as the matrix is, falls into a tattered, basically, sheet around the earth, and there are more and more holes and penetrations through which organic codes and energies can enter this reality system. But I would say that the biggest lesson for Justine and I of this year is learning how to basically turn off our various energy streams with external conflicts or circumstances. Because what happens is when we get hooked in a particular narrative, then the way of the inversion and the way of parasitic constructs is to create stories that loop over and over and over and over again. And we'll play out these scenarios often in our heads. Maybe we're trying to go to sleep, or maybe we're trying to meditate, or, just doing dishes at any point during the day. These loops will come in. And that in that moment, our energy is being drained because we're projecting our consciousness into a particular avenue that is not actually creation. It's just a story, and it's just a construct. And every single one of those is connected to a parasite somewhere in our physical being. And those parasites are engineered technology, if you will, that is designed to infiltrate and then fracture our energy body so that we're scattered in a million different directions, and we cannot pull back all of our energy into a cohesive thread that's in alignment with our channel that allows us to project our true life force and our true blueprint onto planet Earth. And so, of course, the medicine is a constant reminder. I mean, I think all medicines, to a degree, just like meditation, just like so many practices, are about pulling all of those fragmented aspects back into the centralized channel, and then conversely working with the body to clear out all of the parasitic hooks that are trying to basically steal our energy by having us focus attention in other areas that are not the most resonant. And the really tricky thing with all of this is sometimes our true life path can look so similar to a very, very, very subtle detour. And those detours can become massive distractions or massive departures from what we're actually here to do. And it can be a mastery of its own just to observe the self, again, kind of from that higher perspective, walking the tightrope or walking on the knife edge, and literally an opportunity a minute to get distracted. And everybody knows, if you've ever walked on a slack line or a tightrope or anything like that, a moment of distraction is terminal in that game, right? The second you lose focus or you catch something else out of your peripheral vision, you're going to fall. And so in the game that is life, or the game that is coming here into Earth, into this semi-simulated construct around a beautiful, cherished organic structure, we have to stay sharp at every possible moment. And the way that we can stay sharp, of course, is, what do you think, Justine?
Being in flow is what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
Cleaning out the body, meditating, taking care of ourselves. That was a trap. I have my own thing I want to say.
Okay,
Finish what you want to say first.
You can say your thing. It's okay. I'll come back to it.
Well, I was just really thinking about when you mentioned slackline of just, we're into extreme sports and that flow state. And I think what I've really been working on the past few years since stepping into the cleanse work that we do with the medicine is being in that flow state in my life. And our lives, from everyone who observes them, is that it's very full and active and hectic, just like being in a river full of rapids or on the steeps of, a ski run. And so much of it is, it's being sharp, but in your body, not necessarily in your mind. Your mind does not need to grasp what it is that you're supposed to be doing here on the planet. It does not need to grasp how everything works or how we're going to be delivered from and or deliver, from these old systems into Nova Gaia or the new octave. It's about bringing it all the way in to the body and being in that flow state where your intuition and your feeling, which is instantaneous, is able to guide you and recultivating that trust that your higher self is so much more intelligent that you can even imagine intelligence could be, that the sharpness is so much the presence in your own body and capacity to feel those subtle shifts in energy and know this is worth my energy, this is not. This is a distraction. I'm going to choose to go down that road of the distraction because I'm curious about it or there's something there. And at the same time, I will be able to feel at which I've reached a point that is far enough away that I want to return back to the main flow of my path. And as we restore our feeling, and I really think for men in this time period, it's a particularly deep challenge and calling to restore that feeling architecture and to release the attachment to the mental body, to be able to just be in flow. And when you're in flow, all of these incredible things line up at precisely the right moment, and we experience it every time we serve in the cleanse work or receive in the cleanse work. Big decisions have been lining up, and even with all of the challenges of this past year, you can, even though it pains me to say because I have hated being in it, but you can see the architecture of it and how our response has been in alignment with what action we have needed to take in our lives and the way we've needed to participate in not just our lives, but Taos County is a portal that's restoring itself from quite the inversion.
That reminded me what I was going to say earlier, which is that there is a very fine line and distinction between also bypassing, meaning bypassing your own emotional trauma or bypassing worldly events that are unpleasant or bypassing certain tasks that have fallen into our lap and getting sucked into timelines or perspectives that are not actually for our highest possibility. So what is the difference between bypassing and going down a life path that is counter to your highest purpose on earth? And that is a very subtle and challenging distinction, because often the things that we want to bypass, we experience huge amounts of resistance in our system when we're facing them. And the same feelings come up, of course, when we're working in an area that is counter to our true lifeline. Like, say we're like cranking away at a corporate job and we're kind of miserable every day because we know we're supposed to be doing healing work or be an artist or whatever it is. And I think one way that we can make that distinction is to, zoom way out, as far out as you can, and look at whether the thing that's come into your life offers an opportunity for you to move through a particular set of blocks or challenges that have been with you maybe for this lifetime or many lifetimes, or perhaps it's a lineage component or whatever it may be. And then again, to return to that concept of impeccability with your energy. So not to go and hightail it and just run away from the thing that scares you because you don't want to deal with it and because it's frightening, but also not to get totally absorbed in all of the gritty nuances of things that are often quite unsavory, like maybe a relationship that's gone awry, or, in our position, dealing with the court system or dealing with authorities. However that looks, there is the possibility, I believe, to accept with grace that whatever is coming before you has come up for a reason to challenge a particular aspect or a particular block that's within your system, to move through that block, and then to not get trapped by the entanglement of whatever that thing is that you fear. Because often the things that we fear are things that are designed to entangle with us and to trap our energy. And so, again, we return to this idea of when is enough enough, and when do we need to basically turn off a particular channel in our multidimensional awareness or in our mental awareness. And if we're starting to go into looping around a particular subject, or we feel like some drama in our lives is consuming all of our energy, that's a great time to go find silence, do a flush, go and, to the best of your ability, maybe do some medicine, if that's an option, if you have a safe container and access. And it's a great opportunity to attempt to track both the infiltrating energies and then to also zoom out into that higher perspective and say, how is this actually part of my life path in my soul's development to bring in my greatest possible offerings? Because we have so much we're here to do in the future, in the immediate future. And so our experiences now, even if they look challenging, are preparing us for a really phenomenally beautiful and magical age that is incoming here on planet Earth.
I'd love to just speak to a few points there and reiterate some of them. And as we consolidate ourselves and integrate or reintegrate ourselves, it's exactly what Zane ended with there. We can fully express into this creation pathway. And what we do with the work that we do, so much of it comes down to self-responsibility. And that's kind of the keystone of recognizing if you are on a derailed path, if you are putting out a bunch of projection, or if you are on a path of bypassing. When we avoid or bypass something, we project external circumstances as the reason for what's going on in our lives, rather than taking the responsibility and saying, what is it in me that is bringing these circumstances up? And it doesn't mean that the parasite is you, or the hook is you, or the wound or the trauma is you, but it is in your field and ultimately is in your body, which is what our attunement to the cleanse work is removing these hooks from our body, looking inward inside the self to recognize, where is this hooked into my system? and then projecting energy outward, taking that responsibility that I am the only one who has control of my body, my field, my life, my circumstances. And it's up to me to transmute those, ideally in a physical way, so that they're fully pulled through all of the dimensions of our field. And the key signature of projection is when you notice yourself as a victim of other people's words or actions or external circumstances or things that are happening to you. You're stepping out of your creation pathway and giving up your power, and that is projection. And then simultaneously, as Zane mentioned, what is the difference between, a life path that may be dissonant? It also might be required for you to reconsolidate yourself and then bypassing. And if we are walking in self-responsibility, we can feel that, okay, this is a moment in time in which I am not living to my fullest creative potential or in full and complete alignment because I need to clean up one aspect of myself and reintegrate it back into myself so that I can more fully step into flow. And as we swirl and spiral around, we're not on a linear path. Creation is nonlinear and growth is nonlinear. Look at a plant grow. It's completely nonlinear. And so you may be sprouting a limb over here, watering that, focusing on that, and it might seem far away from the true source or essence of your flow, and yet at the same time, it's an aspect of yourself that needs to be cultivated. Maybe it needs to be weeded. Maybe it just needs to be acknowledged and recognized, or maybe it needs to be released, and it doesn't actually belong to your life path anymore. And so I think this is just such an interesting topic, and maybe we'll circle back to it because we are seeing around us this kind of bypass energy, particularly around cultivating the new earth energies. And ultimately, it's up to our own attunement to ourselves to know if we're in that flow, if we are allowing our fullest expression of creation to transmit through us, and if we're broadcasting that out and trusting ourselves to know when we're in that alignment, and then taking the precise right action in the right moment.
Yeah, it takes two to tango, as the old adage goes. So any experience that comes into your life, full stop, any and every experience that comes into your life, you were responsible for creating at some level. And once you have perspective on the workings of parasites, you can see perhaps that it was a parasitic hook that brought an event into your life. But you were still the one that projected the energy from that parasite, and through whatever infiltrated belief systems or thoughts that you may have contained in your own mind and within your own field, that then translated into physical expression in the world. And so, I mean, even right there, parasites can become a form of bypassing. Or you can use awareness around parasites to massively up-level your ability to navigate challenging situations, because at once you own the responsibility for whatever came forward in your life, and conversely, you have a toolkit to be able to clear that influence out of your life. And so, again, that mastery, that walking that tightrope, walking that knife edge, there's so much precision required of us at this moment, and absolute impeccability if we don't want to fall into the traps of the matrix. And those traps are literally all around us because the matrix is dying. It's failing. Its energy reserves are being used up rapidly, and it is desperately lashing out and looking for any possible source of energy. Just in the same way that we are talking about those entities, the entire artificial construct of the matrix itself is failing right now. And so we really need to be more aware than ever before of what we are giving our energy to, where we are putting our energy, and also not running away from things that we are fearful of, because things that we fear hold power over us. And so confronting that head on is also a huge step forward in our evolution. I've really enjoyed over the course of the past couple years watching my internal framework around external authorities be redefined. And as I learned that the whole game of our legal system and our birth certificates and all of these really scary things, the the police and the DMV and, TSA security, that literally all of these systems are fake, but you have to self-educate and learn how to own your own sovereignty, and then how to go through and face each system head on and make corrections and dive into the nitty-gritty components of clarifying what is the living being and what is the overlay. That actually is a process of liberation. And so on the other side of every fear is the potential for liberation. But there's also the potential to get sucked into offshoot, inverted life paths where we end up in various hellscapes or unpleasant circumstances, or looping around negative default programming events that we're spinning in our minds forever. So now is the moment for mastery, and we're all doing it, and we're doing an amazing job, and we're holding so much during this moment. All of us, we're holding so much. If we could see it, we would be absolutely floored and blown away at our own capacity to transmute energy and to heal this planet. So keep a little pep in our step and continue to look towards the beautiful creation codes that are incoming and all of the amazing creations we have yet to bring into this world.
Whee! You are amazing.
Yeah, you're doing so good. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.